Hello, so today I'm here with Carola in Wales, in her lovely house by the sea, in the damp, which will be relevant to our talk, climate of West Wales. And we're talking with Fanny Roque, who's also by the sea near Bordeaux. And she's the president of the French Federation of Shiatsu practitioners. And she specializes a lot in working with cancer. She does work with everybody, but with cancer clients and also women with menstrual cycles and with pregnancy and lots of other things. And we were talking about what would be helpful to share with you with our different experiences today. And we felt the theme of nourishing ourselves through all our different stages of life. In fact, how can we nourish ourselves and mother ourselves, and what happens if we don't? And as we were talking about this, Fanny said that one of her favorite meridians is the spleen meridian. So for those of you who know about Chinese medicine, spleen is very linked to, or an aspect of spleen is very linked to mothering and to the earth. But I will let Fanny and maybe Carola say more about the spleen. And I was also saying what I found over the years for nourishing and mothering for me, which also I've needed a lot in my life, is the penetrating vessel, or the Chong Mai. So I'm going to hand over first, I think, to Fanny, and Carola will pop in with little snippets of information. Because we also want to show you the richness of Shiatsu, and that ultimately, yes, we have the theory, but it's in the practice that we develop our work and we understand things differently at different stages of our lives, but also depending on where we live and the type of clients that we see. And it's constantly evolving, and it doesn't have to be either or. So it can be spleen for mothering, sometimes more with some clients, they might respond more to that. Other times it might be more the penetrating vessel, or even something else. So Fanny, why is the spleen such a favorite meridian for you?
Well, maybe because I need it a lot. So I think it might be linked. But I work with new parents and especially women because, in Shiatsu we have a lot of women clients. And I saw that, the curve between spleen 3 and spleen 4 is different from each person to person. But for new parents and especially women, it's always curved, and I remarked that, and I started working a lot with spleens that I found on my HARA diagnosis that was usually in Q, and I think it's one of the vessels that I started to reach more easily, and I like it because when I'm working on spleen, it's always very calm and a bit slow. It's not specific techniques, and it's not difficult to reach, and we have this calm and this nourishing energy when we are doing spleen. It's like for new parents, they are nurturing and helping their child, and for this moment we are doing the nourishing, and we are like cocoon, we're making like a cocoon during our shiatsu. That's why I like it, and I found it very effective for a person who wants to have a child before the pregnancy, and for during the pregnancy, of course, after, for new parents, just like I said, and even I'm working with people with cancer and they have like edema, big arm or big legs due to the surgery. And I found out that spleen meridian was quite effective to reduce that. So all good.
Can I ask you, where is your favorite place to work, the spleen meridian, those big arms?
Yes, it's like a lot of Shiatsu practitioner, I'm sure. It's around spleen 6, in the leg, really in the leg, the foot and the leg. And then I just have to close my eyes, and it's so deep that you don't have to look, you're just there, and and all the earth going up, nourishing the person like that. I like it quite a lot. And the other area is here near the breasts, because it's an area that's not usually worked if you go to someone who's doing massages, etc. And with shiatsu we apply a great pressure, And so people are saying, I was so tense. I didn't know I was so tense here. And oh, it's so great. Now I can, move in better ways.
I used to think sometimes about the spleen, that whole area of the breast, that, you can give heart energy, and heart energy will really come from your center. But that quite often, if we're not giving heart energy, if we're not giving our whole energy properly, that we'll give it just from the spleen. We'll just give it in this sort of nourishing others, but not nourishing ourselves, with more of a focus on the side, the breast area. Whereas if we give it with the heart area as well, that really brings the spleen into it. That used to be how I used to feel sometimes about the spleen when I used to do more shiatsus. Yeah. How do you feel about that, Fanny?
I think Suzanne is going to help us with the Chong Mai, because I think it's like, when you're doing the Masunaga extension of the heart and the heart protector here, and you are going here and rejoin the spleen, actually, like the Chong Mai, who is doing that. And I like to work with spleen and heart, or spleen and Chong Mai, because when you have nourished, you have to love after that. So yes.
Yeah.
I used to find that joining up spleen 21, which was the end of the spleen meridian, and heart 1, which is the beginning of the heart meridian, which is the next on the cycle, holding those 2 points together used to be very good. I seem to remember. Yeah. Go on, talk about the Chong Mai and the breasts.
Okay, so yes, I agree with everything that Fanny and Carola said. And I found, I really discovered the extraordinary vessels when I was working with pregnant women, because I felt, yes, the spleen is really important, but there's something I'm missing. And like Carola, I felt, yes, I want to work with the heart, and I want to work spleen here. But also I find with the heart, yes, the anchoring of the heart can be a bit unstable as well. So I think I found often that I wanted to work with spleen in the abdomen, because there's also a lot of spleen points. So Fanny, you talked a lot about the feet and the end, but in the middle, there's a lot of spleen points. And it really, as you said, I can't remember if now, but earlier we were talking about the spleen really is the center of the body, is the earth. It's the part between heaven and earth, and it's giving that solidity. And there's a lot of spleen points under the ribs, also at the level of the navel, and then coming down into our groin. And I found that I gradually over the years realized that was the yin linking vessel. You talked to me about a question about that, which I actually see as quite connected with the penetrating vessel, or the Chong, but I better not get too much into the yin linking. The penetrating vessel, which was really one of the first extraordinary vessels, apart from conception and governing, that I felt strongly was in pregnancy, and it's very linked with the blood. It's called the sea of blood. And the points of the spleen that you were talking about, spleen 4, is also on the penetrating vessel, and it's what known as its regulating point. So if you hold spleen 4, and I love your little image of the dip, when you go into there, I feel, oh, I'm going to this really deep space that connects with the center, but also with the heart, and and the whole of the penetrating vessel. And then spleen 6 you also mentioned, which is the meeting of the 3 yin. So I also feel when I'm working spleen 6, I'm not just connecting with spleen, but also with kidney energy, which is a part of the movement of fluid as well, and also the liver energy. So I really like that point. And then I realized that's also on the penetrating vessel. And then there's some stomach points on the knee, on the legs, which stomach is again earth. But then in the abdomen, it opens up into the kidneys. And we were talking about how it follows the kidney meridian in the chest. And when we're talking about edema, fluid, also moving the fluid, spleen, I agree, can be really helpful. But the fluid itself is also linked with the kidney energy, which can often be linked with spleen as well. It supports, because you were talking about not just now, but before we started talking and recording, the water, there's too much water, so we want to work with earth, with spleen, which I agree. But also the penetrating vessel links in the kidneys as well. And then it has these wonderful branches on the breast, which I feel you talked about Mazanaga, heart protector, and triple heater in the breast. Well, penetrating vessel, it has these branches, and it doesn't have a point on the spleen, but it's really is connecting with the spleen, with the breasts, and then into the breast tissue goes into the arm and heart one, as Carola was saying. So I've actually, on my recent diagrams and in my work with the penetrating vessel, I've added in heart one. It's not in any of the text, but it kind of makes sense because in Shiatsu, in one session, we're not just working with one meridian. And you said you often feel the spleen leads you into other things, and that's what I feel with the penetrating vessel as well. It's connecting all these different things together, and the breast is very much how we hope that a mother nourishes her baby with giving breast milk, which is a transformation of blood, but giving her heart and opening her heart to her baby. But it's also important, as you said, that many parents, new parents, don't take time to nourish themselves fully. And so we're giving, but we also need to be receiving. So it's that dual movement of opening our heart and our breasts and our blood and our love to others. But do we receive enough? And to receive, it's also, it does come back to the spleen. I want to link it back to the spleen as well. To have the breast milk and for energy for us, we need to be eating good food. And a lot of new parents are too busy and they don't focus enough on the food, have time. But remembering also that spleen isn't just about taking in the physical nourishment, it's we need to be nourished by the quality of the relationships we have with the people around us as well.
And Fanny, you were
Yes.
talking about also about exercise and how new parents don't have time for physical activity.
Yes, physical exercise is so important. I saw that during my training in Shiatsu cancer because everyone say that it reduces by half the risk of having a cancer if you do regular physical activity like the OMS wants. It's like three times a week at least. And I thought that for other persons and especially new parents who are stopping their physical activities after the birth and maybe during the pregnancy, and they are waiting that their children are more grown like 10 years old maybe. So there's always, most of the time, there's a gap of 5 maybe 10 years when the people are not doing physical activities, and spleen is directly linked to that because spleen is about physical activity and having enough rest too. So it's always a balance between doing enough but not too much. And in Shiatsu, I always ask the person, are you walking? Are you riding? Do you have any hobbies? Do you like to dance? And if they say, I don't have the time, well, Shiatsu is good and I work on the spleen, but I always tell, put some music on, just dance with your child or do things like that. It's really important for me. And Qigong and Doin are very good steps to go into more cardiac activities.
Actually,
spleen can help do that. Spleen can help. Okay, I'm good. I had 1 hour on the mat. I feel better. Okay, I'm ready to walk. I'm ready to do something. If you're too exhausted, you can't. You can't. It's too much energy. So we have to level up the level of energy, and then they can increase it by doing physical activity, I think.
No, I agree. If you do only focus on the physical activity, it can even be depleting. If people aren't taking the time, as you said, rest is an important part. There's always a dual nature to all of the energies, and we need to rest and nourish, and then we can do some exercise. And that's early on in my career, I wanted to know more about pregnancy and birth and postnatal, and there weren't any shiatsu or bodywork training, so I studied with a an obstetric physiotherapist in America who taught me postnatal exercise for women, but with their babies, which I thought was really great, because often women say, oh, but they want to give to their baby and they think I have to wait till my baby's asleep and then I don't have time to look after myself. I've got to clean the house or cook. And I'd say, no, when your baby's awake, or even if they're asleep a bit, you can rock them and hold them and do movements and exercises with your baby, which actually is great, because if you start when your baby's quite little, they're not so heavy. And then as they grow and you keep exercising, it's like weight training and you get a bit more weight as your baby grows. And I love teaching parents things they can do with their baby, because then they're also more motivated. But I think it's important to make it fun, that they enjoy. It's not like, oh, something else I have to do with my baby, like change their nappy. It's like, have fun with your baby and be nourished by your baby actually as well, because babies can give us so much joy if we're open to receiving and allowing them to, not play with them. Play is really important, I feel.
There's this concept, isn't there, in East Asian medicine, that babies get their nourishment from food and they also get nourishment from air. But babies in particular get a lot of their nourishment, their chi, from their parents. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
That the parents are actually giving their chi to the child and the child is receiving it.
But that the parents can receive chi from their baby as well. I think that's really important. That it's
Also
not just
true.
give. Allow yourself to receive from your baby. That's what I say. That's what I try and get people to see, that their baby can also give and nourish them, and to be open to receiving that. But that is hard if if they have had maybe a difficult birth, or the baby's not feeding and the baby's crying, then that can be hard. I do appreciate that. And then if that's the case, find out what other ways you can be nourished, I think is important, so that you are being nourished always, like you said, Fanny. You're not just giving out nourishment, because then the spleen will get very depleted, and also that will then affect the penetrating vessel and the extraordinary vessels and all of the energies in the body. And that's something we must never forget, that everything is interconnected, isn't it? That's what I love about Chinese medicine. Spleen can't exist. It's part of a circuit, as Carola already said. Spleen then moves into heart. It's a continuation. We call them these different names, but they're part of a whole circuit, aren't they? Where does spleen stop and heart begin? Yeah, is the question. But it's like, because they're all interconnected.
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting what you said about receiving from the baby too. And I had, well, I'm in my Shiatsu practice now, and I saw my foot on my mat, and I was like, well, when I'm doing Shiatsu, it's not giving. It's also taking joy in what I'm doing and being nourished too by the act of doing Shiatsu. It's because we see a lot of colleagues that are, well, I'm giving and it's really important that the person is great. And maybe they're doing very long Shiatsu because, you want to do every, like you said in another video, every little finger and doing everything very, very nicely. And the person is very, really relaxed, etc. But while we are doing Shiatsu, it's important that we feel that we are nourished too by this exercise and this activity. It's always yin yang and giving, receiving, etc.
And that pleasure we feel in the giving of Shiatsu is also a great guide to our practice, isn't it? That you go to a point and you fall into it, and it's like, oh my God, this feels wonderful. And you just stay there, and then the person says it felt wonderful too. That it's a great guide if we're aware of our ability to receive.
I think it's great, that's Fanny, because I think it's sometimes people feel a bit guilty, perhaps, that oh, I'm receiving and I should be giving. But I think it's really important, like Carola, that we take pleasure. I wouldn't want to do Shiatsu. I've been doing Shiatsu so long because I really love giving Shiatsu, and I feel really nourished by giving Shiatsu. And my main Shiatsu teacher, Sonia Morisot, actually she was French. That's part of my connection. She lived in the UK, but she saw it as that she had humans supporting each other. That was the symbol that you're in giving, you're also receiving. And physically in Shiatsu, we need the other person, don't we?
Yes,
We
they
can't, we're not,
support
but
us.
they support us physically. But it's great that you say that. And I think that's something that Shiatsu practitioners, perhaps you clearly don't need reminding, but some people don't, they're just giving all the time, and they're in that mode of giving rather than allowing themselves to receive.
In a way, it separates us from the other person, doesn't it? It's like if you're giving to somebody, they are separate from you and you are the doer. Whereas if you're just being with somebody and merging with them in a way, then it's not clear who's giving what to whom. Yeah.
Because we're connecting with the whole.
Yes.
And being nourished by the whole, all the energies. We've talked about people, but by the land, by everything else in nature, by the whole. If we can.
Yes, and you know, when there are clients who say after the shiatsu, they are like, oh, and you're big with energy. And they say, you must be very tired after giving shiatsu because your pressure are quite strong. And I'm like, no, I'm okay. It's not my energy that I give you. It's the energy that's going through my hands to you, but it's not my energy. It's not mine. And I think even for them, because some clients are inquiet, worried that they are straining our energy for. So I'm like, no, it's not mine. Be reassured.
Yes, and that I enjoy it, and I'm receiving from you. Sometimes they're surprised. Sometimes I do, depending on the client. I might say, "Oh yeah, no, it's really good for me to give shiatsu." I receive as well. Yeah. So that's quite a nice ending, isn't it? Of it being nourished, that we're also being nourished by the shiatsu.
Yes, and I think to receive shiatsu is good too, because sometimes we are giving shiatsu, but it's important for us to have the sense, well, of the earth. Like we say, spleen is in French is la chair, not the muscles. How do you say in English?
It's the flesh.
The flesh. Yes, exactly. The energy of the flesh, and for us, particularly to receive these contacts with our flesh is quite important and nourishing, because we can doing physical activity, like we said, and have great persons around us. But I think it's important to be touched, and the spleen is a bit like that, is the physical, the earth, the physical between fire and water.
Yeah, I agree. And even though I love the penetrating vessel, I also love the spleen. But when when I'm teaching people to work the penetrating vessel, I say do it in a really earthy way, which I think I'm really meaning do it in a really spleeny way, that you feel the tissue. I mean, it's actually not so much in the arms, the penetrating vessel, but you feel the tissue of the breast, you feel the tissue of the abdomen, you feel the tissue or the flesh of the legs, and it's a very grounding, anchoring. So there is a very earthy, spleeny quality as part of the penetrating vessel.
Yes, and I think the spleen meridian, I think that's what you said in one of your video, Carola, is quite large in the arm for the Matsunaga extension, because sometimes we confused with the lung, but lung is more narrowed, and the spleen, you can go in there, it's more large and comfortable in a way, I think.
I know our focus has been on nourishment, and we've brought the spleen in context of nourishment quite a lot. But I would like to just remind ourselves and anyone who's watching also that the spleen has also that moving quality of moving thought, and that it also has the aspect of the intellect. It isn't only about what we eat. It isn't only about giving the nourishment of love. It's also about the activity of our brains as well, and nourishing our brains. And that really we overuse this. If we're in our heads, we're really overusing our spleen, that we should be doing more of the penetrating vessel type of spleen activity, of really bringing in our contact with the earth, our contact with nature, our contact with others, but also interweaving it with this precious gift of intellect, of understanding, of meaning, of purpose.
Yes, and then it's balanced, and it's
Yeah.
not that just being in the head. And sometimes people do talk about the third brain being in our gut,
Yeah.
in our center, and so
Huge neural network in there.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So maybe that feels like enough for today, and we could invite
our brain activity.
brain activity and screens and engaging in this way, and maybe people watching might have questions to ask or reflections on maybe what even your favorite meridian is, but how you might respond to some of the things that we've been raising. And I hope it's given you an idea that you can have, that's also the thing about Shiatsu, that each practitioner is different. We have our own favorite meridians, but we're going through our phases of our life. And that's what I love about Shiatsu. There's not one answer to everything. It's really about working with each individual in our way, and it may be different from somebody else's. So enjoy the differences, and ask your questions, and thank you for sharing this time with us today.
Thank you.